Okay, can you hear me? Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Michael Korkuska. Prize for anyone who knows what nationality that name is? Anyone? Canadian. No, come on. Russian, Polish. You're never going to get it. Czech? No? Close? Slovak. Who got Slovak? Okay, give him a book. Give him a book. We have one of Reid Hoffman's. We have some of Reid Hoffman's latest book, The Alliance, to pass out. So who was it back there? Raise your hand who did Slovak. There we go. I see the lights. All right, that's great. So I'm very happy to be here in Bangalore. My first time in Bangalore was 12 years ago, 2002, and it's changed quite a bit. I've been very impressed with, I think in the last few years, the amount of startup energy there is here. This is not something that was really present before 5 years ago. Am I right? Is that true? So quick show of hands. How many are in enterprise SaaS businesses? Most everyone. Okay, how many in consumer internet businesses? All right, a few. How many have been in both at some point? So just a few. So you're the ones that'll keep me honest about whether this is correct or not. I'm going to talk a little bit about, so I spent most of my career in enterprise, and about 5 years ago, I joined LinkedIn, which is really at its heart a consumer enterprise business, although we do have a SaaS, a consumer internet business, although we do have a SaaS enterprise business on the side as well. And I've learned a few things along the way, and I thought I'd share them with you. Maybe some of the lessons are applicable as product managers in enterprise, but also any of you who might be interested in making a transition from enterprise to consumer at some point, either by starting your own company or joining one of the many interesting startups that are here at NASSCOM, may find some of these differences enlightening as well. And I'm going to start by saying Happy Halloween. Does everyone know it's Halloween today? Yeah, big holiday in the Bay Area, in Silicon Valley. And the other thing, we've heard several speakers talk about what, acting like a Silicon Valley product manager or working with Silicon Valley investors seems to be an ongoing theme. And one of the important things that if you are going to interact with Silicon Valley is knowing what this logo is in the upper rights of the slide. San Francisco Giants, champions of of baseball. It's called the World Series. It turns out American teams win the World Series every year because there's no teams outside of America. But oh no, not as part of that competes in the World Series. So all right, enough of that. Let's see, is this working? There we go. So really quickly, LinkedIn, we just announced our Q3 numbers. 332 million members at the end of Q3. We've figured out how to make money as well. We'll do slightly north of $2 billion US dollars of revenue this year with 45% year-over-year growth on a quarterly basis, so still growing quite rapidly. But I'm not here to talk about the corporate results. I'm here to talk about product management. We're a product-first company. Reid Hoffman, our founder, is a product manager at his core, and I think we've built a really strong product culture. And you'll see here some of the places that product management alums from LinkedIn have gone. Some quite impressive companies. So I feel privileged to have had a chance to enter such a strong culture and really learn from some of the best. Now, one of the things that's a truism amongst consumer product managers is that enterprise software stinks. How many people have heard this? Enterprise software is terrible end user experience. Yeah, people have heard this. Why? Why? Well, the observation is the user is not the buyer. So you're selling the software to IT managers, to IT security, to sales managers, to whoever it is, people who don't actually use the product. People who are in front of the product every day get very little voice. And so you end up over time building the product for people who don't use it. So that means, of course, everything's good in consumer because the user is the buyer. So everything smells like roses instead, right? Not so much. In the consumer world, you're the user. You as a product manager are a user or potential user of a product. And your teammates are users. So this is fantastic because all you got to do is look in the mirror and build a product for you and everything will work out great. Well, it turns out that's not the case, because not only are you the user, well, it's a minefield, and it's very dangerous. So not only are you the user, but your boss is a user, your CEO is a user, your mother is a user, and everybody knows why your product stinks. So everyone's got an opinion because they use your product. And let me tell you, at LinkedIn, this is very true. I mean, with 330 million users, 6,000 employees at LinkedIn, most of those 6,000 employees you LinkedIn every day, you cannot walk down the hall without hearing an earful about how bad your product is and how it could be better. It's a giant pain. So it's not so obvious that consumer software is actually that much easier to navigate than enterprise software. And I hope to share a few insights here that go beyond these sort of obvious points and get at some more subtle points that actually maybe can be applicable to you in your lives. I'm going to do that in 4 categories. How responsibilities are different, how metrics are different, how the culture of consumer internet is different, and then product management practices and how they differ as well. So starting with responsibilities, the first and most obvious one is you are unlikely to be involved in pricing. So this is kind of interesting. In fact, your product's probably not going to even make any money. You won't be preparing the sales team how to sell the next version of the product. You won't get invited to fancy customer dinners. The life of a consumer internet product manager is a lonely, internal existence, sitting in front of your computers and talking to the 10 people, your engineers and your designer, every day, and never interacting with the outside world. Well, it's not actually that bad, but it's true. At LinkedIn, we actually have a wall between the product managers who deal with the free users and the product managers who deal with paying customers. So my product managers on my teams, I'm on the consumer side of the business, never have to make a trade-off between revenue and user engagement. They never have to make that trade-off. And I think that's been an important part of LinkedIn's success. Because someday, if you have a revenue number on you, some quarter, there's going to be pressure on you to trade off something in the user experience to get that revenue. And by having those responsibilities separate, we don't face that trade-off on a day-to-day basis. I don't have a revenue number on me. The only person who has to make these trade-off decisions is my boss, the CEO of LinkedIn. So really, the pressure is not felt by the individuals. It's a big deal. Second is metrics. You cannot measure the success of your product by its revenue or its profit, which is a follow-on from the previous point. So you have to find other metrics, and you have them. I'm sure you know what some of them are. But you can throw away that MBA, weighted average cost of capital, all of the discounted cash flow analysis, all of the stuff in accounting and finance. It's irrelevant to being successful as a consumer product manager. To the point that we probably at LinkedIn don't really hire MBAs for product managers unless they have previous product management experience. So that's 2. Number 3 is the culture. I'm going to emphasize one point about the culture, really. There's a lot of differences. But we're optimized for speed and the independence of the teams. So you as a product manager and your team, we try to organize and arrange ourselves, and our processes are in place so you can make decisions and push stuff to the site without approvals from 6 different VPs. How many folks, product managers here, have to get sign-off from VPs other than their own in order to push stuff to the site? Yeah, OK. So this doesn't happen. In fact, my team doesn't even have to get sign-off from me to push stuff to the site. They just do it every day. And that's an important cultural difference. OK. This, I hope, is the most interesting part, which is the actual product practices that are a little bit different. I'll try to walk through some of these. 4 basic observations. The first practice is to be data-guided and not data-driven. Hopefully, everyone is that anyways. And I picked this picture for 2 reasons. One is it's maybe a sign about A/B testing. Some of the traffic goes one way and some of the traffic goes the other way. Maybe 3 reasons. The second reason is data can be confusing. It can point you in different directions. You cannot trust it. It lies. It can often tell you what. It can almost never tell you why. And so it can point you in various different directions. The third is why this sign? Why do you need a sign like this? That's kind of crazy. This was taken in Japan. I guess so you don't walk into the water? I'm not sure what the point of the sign is, but I thought it was kind of funny. So what does that mean? Data guided, not data driven. The first is A/B testing. It's just part and parcel of consumer internet practice. And even though I worked in an enterprise SaaS business, we found it very, very hard to do in enterprise settings because customers didn't like the fact that their users might get different experiences from one to another. They were concerned about rollout and training and all of this stuff. They made it very, very hard to implement an A/B testing framework. Now, I'm not sure if that's still true in enterprise software. Anybody, any enterprise software out there? Are you doing lots of A/B testing on your product? Yes? No? Yes, if you raise your hand. Raise your hand if yes, enterprise software, A/B testing. Very few hands. Okay. In the consumer enterprise world, this consumer internet world, this is baffling to us. How do you do product management without A/B testing? It's baffling. So I think you need to do it, and you need to be very clear with your customers that this is good for them in the long run. And we do lots of A/B testing on our enterprise products, and our customers have embraced that. Now, we have some advantages that allow us to do that, make it hard for most enterprise companies to do that. But I think you really need to try to incorporate that into your practice. Also, A/B testing is a completely different level, especially on a site like LinkedIn with the amount of traffic we have. So we've got hundreds of variations going on at any one time, which means that there are lots of test interactions. We're also very concerned with long-term effect, not short-term effect. So at the end of the day, this is so complicated that you have to hire PhD statisticians to help you get it right. I mean, seriously. Now, if you're a startup with 10 people, probably one of them should not be a PhD statistician, unless you're in a big data product. But eventually, you're going to need to get very serious about making sure, especially all these test interactions, don't interfere with each other, and you're being led down the wrong path by your data. Third is finding the right metric. You need to measure user value, the value you're delivering to the users, the value to the company, and short-term versus long-term. So let's take an example. New user signups. Everyone talks about growth hacking, right? I'm sure there were some growth hacking sessions here at the conference. Anybody attend a growth hacking session? Great stuff. And I think LinkedIn has been one of the great growth hacking successes. 330 million members. We've done a lot to do that. There's some good Quora posts if you look on Quora for LinkedIn growth hacking. So let's take new user signups, though. That's a great metric for me to measure in A/B testing. I can do all kinds of things to eliminate friction in that sign-up process and get more sign-ups. But is that what I care about? Do I care about registrations? Probably not. What I care about is long-term repeat users of the product. So somebody who comes back the second week, the second month, the third month, on a continual basis. Now, long-term metrics are very, very tough for A/B testing because you have to wait until that data comes in to know whether your A/B test is working. And by then, it's too late. You've lost months. So this is not an easy problem. You need to start with the end value that you're trying to deliver the user and then work back bit by bit to proxy measures that allow you to get results quickly. In LinkedIn, we can push tests to the site and in hours later have statistically significant results on those. Certainly a day later for many of our products. But that's not necessarily the right thing to do. So we end up holding out cohorts of users to measure over time so we can go back and look at whether this A/B test not only produced a short-term result that looks like it's correlating with long-term value, but actually correlates with long-term value. And there I'll point you back to needing a PhD statistician on there. So as you're holding out cohorts and doing overlapping multivariate testing, that you actually are getting results that you can trust. Very complicated, at a completely different level. And then finally, data lies, and you want to get the voice of the member in there. In enterprise software, this was generally easy. You went and talked to customers. You could get a pretty good sample by talking to a small set of customers. You go out and talk to 20 customers, easy to arrange. We got 330 million users, 100 million monthly active uniques. I can't talk to them. So incorporating the voice of the member through customer service channels, through on-site surveys, through focus groups, all of these methods are really, really important to combine with the data that you get from testing. but it's very, very difficult to trust when you're out talking to members that you're getting a signal that's clear. Lots of noise there. I don't have any good advice about that other than, at the end of the day, that's why you get paid, to make those judgment calls. If a machine could do it, we'd just turn it over to the machines. Practice number 2, swim in rivers. So what does this mean? Well, in the consumer internet, distribution is key. Everybody thinks about product distribution. And there's no sales force running out, talking to your potential users, asking them to sign up. Maybe very early you're out signing up people at the local coffee shop or something like that. Whoops. But I swear I'm not pressing the back button. No one is going to make your users log in. So you need to be where the users are already. I'm thinking here more about returning users, getting return engagement, not initial signups. So we call that swimming in the river, finding the rivers and being there. The rivers to think about are email. People use email a lot. And so if you can get into their email, you can collect their email address, put something in there, maybe you can attract their attention. But there's lots of noise, and increasing noise in email, and people are using it and interacting with it less. SEO. Getting SEO right is huge. LinkedIn has been incredibly successful at using SEO to engage users. On people profiles today, people search, you're very likely, if it's a professional, to run into a LinkedIn profile, get you back to LinkedIn. Increasingly, we're looking at content that is published on LinkedIn as well in that channel. It takes a big investment to get it right. Search. If your product has search built in, you want your product to appear in search. So I'm responsible for the search team at LinkedIn. The content team is continually, and the jobs team are continually begging my product managers in search to surface jobs and content in the search results page, because they know that's a huge source of traffic. It's a big river for LinkedIn. The home page, you want to be on the user's home page, and on the deck of their mobile phone. That's really the new home page for users today. You've got to find ways to get into all these places if you want people coming back to your product day after day. And I can't emphasize the mobile download. I mean, I think everybody knows that. But on the consumer internet, if you can get people downloading your mobile app, then you're in a good position. If you can't, it's really, really tough. Mobile users are not engaging with mobile email very well. All the other channels are very tough to interact with on mobile. And then finally, virality. We all talk about, we all dream of a really viral product and a K factor greater than 1. That almost never happens. And enterprise products probably don't have that many viral mechanisms, but I think every product manager needs to ask themselves the question, how will users share their experience with this product? And find a way to have them share that experience with the product to make those viral loops happen in some way. Finally, I want to call out one of our former VPs of product, Adam Nash, who has some great writing on virality and viral loops. Cycle time matters. So if I have a product that has a viral loop, but it takes a month for that viral loop to close, even if it has a high K factor, your growth rate is going to be pretty small. If you have a lower viral factor and it's a 1 day or 1 hour to close that loop on the user responding or not, you're going to see much more tremendous growth. What Adam says is rabbits breed fast, not because they have giant litters, but because they do it very often. So, practice 3, immediate user value. So in the consumer internet, because users don't have to log into your product, friction is bad. If you're asking them for information, you need to give them immediate value on this. I think it's a great lesson for enterprise as well. For example, a classic example from LinkedIn, we don't ask for date of birth. Now that would be very, very useful to know when you were born in terms of targeting advertising. But we never asked in the early days because we couldn't figure out what we could give the user on the next screen that would benefit them if they gave us their date of birth. So we don't ask. And when we ask, we want to deliver that reward quickly, ideally on the next page. And we want to show that value than rather tell. Give us this because we can do this. We'd rather demonstrate in the product immediately what benefit that the user gets by giving this information. And finally, the trick here that I think is worth thinking about is there other information that you can ask for that gets you the same result? So in this case, if I ask you for your university graduation date, I can get pretty close to your age. And my guess is overall accuracy of that is the same as putting a date picker field in front of people and asking them for their date of birth, because people will lie or people will enter the wrong dates. And when I ask somebody for their university, I'm not touching it, I swear, I'm not. Maybe if you wave it, it does things, is that true? Wow. I think if I wave, I'm just too animated, I gotta, all right. When I ask someone in their university, all right, I'm just going to stop right here. Look at it, it's just going. Latency? When I ask somebody at their university, I can give them immediate value. I can connect them to alumni groups. I can connect them to other members of the universities, things like this. And I can guess their age to within a couple of years, probably. OK, last one, and then we'll get to questions. Practice number 4, and this is a big one. What's the asset that you're building? So this image shows both the asset, the house, and the moat. And ideally, when you build an asset, you are not only increasing user engagement and revenue and creating a valuable asset in the data, but you're also increasing the width of the moat and making it harder for people to compete with you. So you want to collect a set of data that improves the user experience and increases your competitive advantage and can be carefully monetized. Obviously, for LinkedIn, profile data is a very important part. I think this applies to enterprise software companies, but most enterprise software companies aren't built from the ground up thinking about the data asset that they can possibly create along the way, and they should. So Salesforce, for example, bought Jigsaw.com a few years back. This was a realization that they needed data that they didn't have. Great company, Salesforce, no criticism at all, an incredible company. But you should try, if you have a startup enterprise company, to think about whether you can build an asset that gives you a competitive advantage. Here's how we think about it at LinkedIn. So we have member growth and engagement that creates a critical mass of data that we use to build more valuable products that brings people back more, that creates a virtuous circle of data and product improvements. So think about what data asset you can create on the side as you're interacting with your users, even in enterprise. Much more difficult problem, but important to think about. OK, and then the final difference, and here I share a quote from Henry David Thoreau, a famous American philosopher, that says, "Beware of all enterprises that require new clothes." So this is saying if you're about to enter a job and it requires you to buy new clothes, be very careful. So if you go from an enterprise software company and you go to a consumer internet company, one of the things you'll notice, at least in Silicon Valley, is the uniform is different. It's very, very important as you're crossing over to get that right. And I'm cognizant that these are both men, and that I think there's a women in tech session that's adjacent to this already, women entrepreneurs. I'll say 2 things. One is there aren't enough women in product management. So for the women out there, I encourage you to get your friends to come along and join. I think that perspective is important. The other important thing to notice is that actually that distinction does not, there is no difference between what the women get to wear in enterprise or consumer. All right, that's it. We have a few minutes for questions here.
Thank you, Michael. We have some time for questions. Can you just raise your hand? Number 1, 2. Anyone says a question? Number 3. So we'll start. Number 4. Please remember that.
OK,
yeah,
numbers 1 through 4. Get our last 4 copies of the book, too. So remember that if you got one of those numbers.
Hi, Mike. So my question is, how does LinkedIn goes about trying to understand the user needs? Like market research, if you will, or user stated and unstated needs, right? How does a product manager should go for that?
So how do we go about understanding user needs?
Right.
Yeah. So first we start with a small set of value propositions that we're trying to deliver on, whether that be keep you up to date on the latest industry news or help you get your next job, and make sure we stay focused on questions inside those value propositions. And it's really a mixture of things. So we're lucky enough to have a lot of site activity, so we can observe user behavior on the site and see what they seem to be looking for and what they're not finding. That's an incredibly important set of data. We run customer satisfaction surveys and NPS surveys for all of our major products on a regular basis. Again, easy to do because we have a ton of site traffic. We do some of that to non-members as well. A little bit harder to reach that audience in a reliable way. And then we do focus groups, and we have user research labs on campus. So a standard mixture of practices to do that.
Thank you.
Hello.
Okay, number 2. Yes. Okay, so I didn't quite hear all of it. So I spent 20 years in enterprise before the last 5 years at LinkedIn in consumer. And what's some advice about going the other direction to enterprise? Yeah. So listen. I think I tried to say some of the differences there without explicitly calling on them. I'll say one thing is you cannot talk to customers to make your decisions. I mean, that's what I always wanted to do, is go talk to customers and users, and because of 330, I mean, it wasn't 330 million, but it was 100 million users at the time. Going out and talking to a small sample isn't going to get you the answer. So that instinct of wanting to talk to people, still do it. It's important, but it's a much smaller bit of the mix. And I had to learn to rely much more heavily on the behavioral data that we're seeing on the site. Find other proxies for the same things. Yeah. And you cannot trust what people say they want, because they're not, like, in enterprise software. Well, for our recruiter users, those people, we can trust what they want, because they spend 8 hours a day, 5 days a week in front of our product. I mean, that's a slight exaggeration, but they're in front of it a lot. But the average user of LinkedIn is on there maybe once a week. And so they're not intimately familiar with the product. If you ask them what they want, they're going to give it to you in just the wrong way. It takes a lot of interpretation. Henry Ford, I think, said if I asked people what they want, they'd say faster horses, right? So you have to look beyond those input signals.
Number three. Hi,
How about just wait for the mic, so that way you can be on the tape too.
Hi, I'm from Accenture, and we are looking at bringing our product to SaaS. And it's a good thing that we just got a brief from you in terms of how do we reach the market. But what I really want to understand is that there's a whole world of consumers that's basically wanting to know that there is a product existing like this in the web, right? So we just really want to understand how do we and constantly improvise on the product based on the experience that they have in the product. I just want to understand, how do you get this data? That's a whole lot of analytics that we can do based on that data. So I just want to understand.
So you're a installed software product that's moving to SaaS?
That's correct.
That's right? Yeah, so listen, I need to understand way more about your business. I don't think there's a generic answer to that question to be able to answer that. I will say there's huge advantages in SaaS in terms of being able to use data to make product decisions. Because all of a sudden, you can see the activity on your site in a way that you're probably not going to see if your product is installed behind the firewall. And that's an enormous advantage of the cloud and SaaS-based services that I haven't seen talked about too much, in part because of the difficulty of convincing customers that you can do A/B testing on their end users. But to me, that's a giant advantage of moving to the cloud. I'd be happy to talk to you more about your particular business offline, but we don't have time for it today.
Sure, thank you.
Could you talk about the new advertising options or any stuff in beta which helps to target better, or just new innovations around advertising which LinkedIn could be doing?
New innovations in the advertising industry. So
in the just targeting on the LinkedIn platform.
on the LinkedIn platform. Well, briefly, I don't want to make this an advertisement for LinkedIn. So we do have some, it's a B2B advertising platform. And we're seeing a lot of growth in content marketing. It's really, that is what's happening. Or I don't know whether it's happening in India, but that's what's happening in Europe and the US today is enterprises publishing valuable content to put it in front of users. And that's an important thing to get your arm around. And the nice thing about LinkedIn is we have targeting information that's unique. So if you want to reach IT decision makers in the Chennai area, it's going to be, we can give you a list. I mean, we're not going to give you their email addresses, but we can send advertisements to those people and those people only. So you can be very specific and targeted in your messages. So.
I'm sorry, we have run out of time, already 30 seconds over. Michael is around. You can always speak to him offline as well. Thank you, Michael, for coming in here and sharing your insights on how do you cross from enterprise to consumer and how do you apply that back into enterprise as well. And here's a token from us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.